I'm Stephanie Linway,
And I'm Robin Bickler.
and our presentation is about athletic co-ops with public schools, a contemporary issue in Catholic education. Sport, as you well know, is an activity that involves more than the movement of the body. It demands use of intelligence and the disciplining of the will. It reveals, in other words, the wonderful structure of the human person created by God as a spiritual being, a unity of body and spirit. Athletic activity can help every man and woman to recall that moment when God the Creator gave origin to the human person, the masterpiece of his creative work. John Paul II. One of the sources that we used for our presentation, it was from the Cardinal Newman Society, and they talked a lot about the importance of athletics in Catholic education because it develops character and virtue, builds school community amongst the students, staff, families, and the larger community. Sports can be an extension of Catholic institutions' mission because the athletes fully understand the unity of body and spirit and often will contribute their athletic gifts to God.
The financing of athletic programs is always difficult for high schools in a Catholic institution. So sometimes we co-op for the benefits of shared funding. This could be on a percentage based of athletes. So a partial co-op, which we do with Austin Public Schools, where we pay only per athlete, or a 50-50 co-op like that we do with Lisle Public School, where we share everything 50-50, which cuts our cost of athletic programs in half. This also provides larger donor support since we have boosters from both schools that fundraise and support us, as well as shared transportation, therefore cutting down the costs that we have for transporting athletes to competitions. Some of the disadvantages with regard to financing athletic programs in a co-op, though, are we have a lack of input on the spending budget. The athletic budget for public schools is a lot higher than that of a Catholic institution. They do receive tax dollars that support them. So oftentimes they set the budget and they like to be a little bit higher on their athletic budget than we would like. They also put all of the funding up front and we pay them back. Therefore, they spend the money how they see fit and don't always consult with us on what is the best use of the funds. Another disadvantage is in the public school setting, they do not need to fundraise to meet their annual budget just for operating expenses, and we at a Catholic school often do. So fundraisers such as pizza sales or cookie dough sales sometimes compete with our donor support base just to operate as a Catholic school, and so we are not always in support of doing as many fundraisers as they do. And then while shared transportation can cut costs, we also have an increase in transportation since our athletes are not housed just within our building. They have to share other schools, and there's a transportation shuttle every single day for practices to get students to where they go. And as we've added a new co-op with Leroy Ostrander, which is 35 miles away, the cost of transportation to send the athletes there every day and the cost of the bus drivers' salaries have gone up significantly.
Pacelli began its co-op with Austin Public Schools in the late 1980s. That is when enrollment at Pacelli started to decline. So students were given the opportunity to join Austin Public Schools for some sports that were not offered at Pacelli. In 1998, our co-op with Lisle Public Schools began. That is the school that we co-op most of our sports for. In 1999, the LP softball team made a state appearance, and that is when the name the LP Athletics was formed. In the 2020s, the gym in Pacelli was renovated, and there were elements that were brought back that showcase our Catholic identity. The picture on the screen is of the gym floor. So there is a cross and then the shamrock in the center. We also added a crucifix to the wall. And this year is the first year that Lisle Pacelli has joined Leroy Ostrander as a 4-school co-op for football.
Another area of conflict when co-oping with a public school is the code of conduct and liability. Public schools and Catholic schools oftentimes have different eligibility standards. Here at Pacelli, we have a much higher academic eligibility standard for our athletes. If they are not passing any of their classes when grades are pulled on a Friday, they must sit out for an entire week's competition as they try to turn missing work in or get that grade up to passing. Where our public school counterparts at Austin Public Schools, you may play with 1F, but not 2. And at Lisle, if you're not passing a class, as soon as you are passing, even within the same day, you are released back to eligibility. So those standards are very different between our schools, and that doesn't hold our students to the same academic standards. Another one would be behavioral consequences. We do have a shared handbook between Lisle Pacelli with regard to the code of conduct for our athletes and coaches. However, how those consequences are enforced varies between schools. And I know that athletes sometimes feel that it isn't fair that if they do not show moral integrity at Pacelli, we might hold them out of competitions following that behavior. Whereas at the public school, that is not always true. We also cannot govern sometimes the language of our coaches or their disrespect of the referees and things that we would if they were employed by Pacelli. Gender identity is another area of conflict between our two schools. As Catholic schools, we only identify boys and girls. However, at the public school, they allow students to choose their identity. And sometimes this causes confusion for our students when they're on a team with someone that is identifying as male but has been born biologically female and such. And yet we do not have any restrictions that we can place when it is co-oping with a public school. And so we just can work on gender identity and the Catholic values we have here at our Catholic school. And the last one is the Virtus and Safe Environment training. All of our staff, coaches, and volunteers at Pacelli undergo Virtus and Safe Environment training, which is mandated by the diocese to make sure that all of our students are truly safe. However, the coaches that are hired by Lisle do not have to go through this training. They are background checked, but have not undergone the Virtus and Safe Environment training. So one of the things that the diocese has asked is that we inform all of our parents of athletes that those coaches did not undergo this additional training, and therefore any liability should something arise, we are not held responsible. So we interviewed students that are athletes currently of the co-ops because we felt that this video applies mostly to them as stakeholders, our parents, and our community of Pacelli.
Hello, I'm Darren. I'm a senior at Pacelli, and I play hockey for Austin Public High School.
I'm Kirsten. I'm a senior at Pacelli, and I play basketball for Lisle Pacelli, track for Lisle Pacelli, and I run cross country for Pacelli.
I'm Joey. I play football for Leroy Ostrander Lisle Pacelli, basketball for Lisle Pacelli, and baseball for Lisle Pacelli.
I'm Grayson. I'm a junior. I do cross country for Pacelli. I run track for Lisle Pacelli, and I play basketball for Lisle Pacelli.
I'm Liz. I run cross country for Pacelli, basketball for Lisle Pacelli, and track for Lisle Pacelli.
I'm Lexi. I'm a senior, and I run cross country for Pacelli. I play basketball for Lisle Pacelli, and I run track for Lisle Pacelli.
I enjoy being affiliated with two schools, and I'm in attendance for a lot of Austin Public Schools school events like their homecoming dance and their participate in the co-op.
I would say the advantages are some schools are better at certain sports, so if you join, you're more competitive with other schools. So being a small school from Pacelli and then combining with another small school, we form a more medium-sized school that's very good at some certain sports.
I don't think there's a major difference between being a public and private school when it comes to sports. There are things like in cross country we pray as a team before we run, which we don't necessarily do when we have Lisle with us, but we do sometimes still make it like an option. We're still able to do it, and they can join if they want.
One thing I would say is that obviously we're a private school and we're Catholic, so there are some differences in beliefs and just kind of the behaviors of some people are very different than we act here at Pacelli. So that's one thing you do notice when you go to a public school and participate, as well as playing against public schools. You just notice sometimes the difference in their actions when you play Christian schools compared to public schools.
And kind of speaking to her point, I feel like sometimes with being at a private school, our expectations expectations are a little higher for like our personal like sportsmanship and our behavior on like the bus and interacting with different people. And you don't always see that with public schools, like it's not as enforced, but it looks really good, prepares us better for the future and interacting with.
I mean, with this being the first year for Leroy Ostrander Lyle Pacelli football, I mean, I walked into the locker room and there was no difference in walking into a locker room with just Lyle Pacelli players like we'd been co-op before. There was not a lot of difference, and we were all just one big family from the beginning.
I would say no. Everybody's been very accepting. We pray, and if we do choose to pray, everybody's respectful of it, and they all join in or they just bow their heads in silence.
I think we could have better representation of our like faith during those co-op sports, but it's kind of hard because once again we can't really force our faith onto other people, and so it's kind of you have to draw that line there of where is enough to represent our faith well while still not pushing the public school to kind of have that because they.
I would say that the difference between if their background was Catholic is they are overall know what's better for you, but they also seem to have a better connection with you. And on bigger teams, there isn't that big of a connection. Like, for example, during cross country, we go to the camp out with our coaches and we have a fun time around the campfire. But then during basketball, we don't really see our coaches that much outside of practice or games.
I think kind of like he said, like just if your coach is Catholic, like you might see them at mass or just certain like church activities where you wouldn't necessarily. So you do kind of have that different relationship, but you have that same thing with your teachers at a at a private school too, where you're able to talk about your faith with them.
I also think that Pacelli is also really good about strengthening our faith from a young age till now. That way, those outside influences can't really control our decisions quite as much as others might. And also, like, our teammates are very that are from the public schools of our faith and things like that.
I would kind of say, if anything, like we accidentally push it onto them just because we're around it all the time. We go to Catholic school, so it's kind of natural for us to bring it up. So I feel like we probably talk about it more than they do.
So from the student athlete perspective, the benefits were stronger teams, more athletes, they have a larger social community, and they feel that they are a positive influence on their public school counterparts. Areas of concern are that they do not have the same expectations, which we highlighted earlier, and they do feel that. But one thing that they identified could improve Catholic identity in co-op sports is including praying before competitions that are held at Pacelli.
And I interviewed some Catholic school parents who have students that participate in Lyle Pacelli athletics. They identified a lot of similarities with the students. Some of the benefits that they see for their own children are that they develop new friendships. They grow in confidence athletically, but also faith or in their faith, because it gives them an opportunity to share their faith with students who might not be Catholic. Some areas of concern that they have are the different expectations for behavior and eligibility because their children are held to higher standards. And sometimes they feel that unsportsmanlike conduct does not reflect well on our values. Some suggestions that they have to improve Catholic identity in our co-op sports are the possibility of adding prayer before games and more communication between the two schools. The Cardinal Newman Society article that we read had a lot of the same recommendations as the students and parents that we talked to. One of the things that they suggested was to hire coaches who are Christian role models. We mentioned before that this is kind of a challenge when the public school in our co-op does the hiring for coaches. But some other things that we could do are to have high standards for our athletes, both academically and morally, which we do in our athlete handbook. to pray either before or after games as a team, and to have sports teams lead school masses.
And these are our references.